Director General, Esperanza Orrana, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this seminar. It is the first time the European Forest Institute organizes a seminar in the southern part of Europe. And we have been able to do so thanks to support from the Spanish government. Thank you for that. And perhaps also because our director inside the European Forest Institute, Mark Falai, has his origin in this country. We are glad to be able to welcome you to this important seminar. It is a dramatic time. At least we have two things in common, at least. First, independently of where we are living in Europe, we are exposed for climate change. Not least in this part of Europe, but also in the part I stem from, the northern part of Europe. It's strange. You don't notice from year to year, from day to day, but suddenly you realize something has happened. It is not seldom extreme weather. So yesterday, when I arrived here in Madrid, I was happy. It was raining. After a month in Sweden without rain and a record warm May month, today predicted 32 degrees Celsius, and tomorrow even more. With, for the first time for many, many years, a risk for forest fires. We are not used to that. It's a new experience. But the warmth and the winds are creating a new situation. I am living de facto in a forest. Sweden is a forest. 75% of our land is covered by forest. I myself, when I left as Prime Minister after many, many years, I decided to do something completely different compared with my earlier life. So I became a farmer, a real farmer, an active farmer. And to have a farm in the middle of Sweden, that is to have a forestry activity and meat production with beautiful big cows and fishing and hunting and a very good life, I must say. But coming close to nature, coming close into my own forests, I can see the gradual shift. And I fear that we are not taking action against climate change. We are underestimating the process. In a way, it has a similarity with the word cancer. If I say cancer to you, it is like a punishment almost. We have all painful experiences of that word, personally or in our own family. But when we say so, someone has a problem with this cancer, we say also, perhaps it is nothing. It will go away. It is just natural. And the same type of relaxed, hopeful attitude we have had to climate change. It will not go away. And if we wait too long, it will not be possible to stop. It is the same with the cancer. Sometimes wonder happens, yes. Also regarding climate change, yes. But you can't take that for granted, and you can't bet on that. You have to go for the secure policies to stop this climate change. And there you have the bioeconomy. There you have the use of our forests to stop climate change. Don't forget that everything that can be produced based upon oil can also be produced based upon wood. The only big raw material that we can use for the chemistry industry, for instance, is the wood. The only thing we can do quickly to substitute cement and steel is to use wood. And we have forests, but they are mismanaged in big parts of Europe. And mismanaged forests, they are not delivering especially much that we can use to combat climate change. And mismanaged forest does also end up, not seldom, in a situation that they are extremely vulnerable for fires. So to be able to combat climate change, we need to use our forest. And when we use our forest, take care of them, we will also combat forest fires. This is important. Therefore, we are collected today. We also have another thing in common, and let me say a few words about that. We are all living in Europe and the European Union. Sometimes I have the impression that we all love to hate this European Union. It's a very dangerous game, I must say, very dangerous, because we need the European Union more than ever. All the big challenges towards the modern society demands more of international political cooperation. And the only political cooperation we have that is of big scale is the European Union. Now we are dismantling this union. UK is perhaps leaving, and we see some big countries having tremendous problems domestically. And we know only one thing: their domestic problems will become the European Union's problem. The problems in southern European banks will become problems in the rest of the bank sector in Europe, if that takes part and goes in that direction. So we have the European Union together. We have a responsibility to take care of it. And we have a responsibility also to criticize it if it's not efficient enough. And sometimes, I must admit, that happens. I have a background in the European Union structures. I have been chairing the European Council. I have been present in many, many important occasions. I have always also been representing my own country as a Prime Minister or a Minister of Finance. And that balance between the national dimension and the European task, that is the difficult thing to carry out, but we need to do it, because if we fail, we all end up being weaker, and that weakness might also hamper our ability to combat climate change. So please take care of the European Union, and please be active against combating climate change. If today's seminar can contribute to these two wishes, I will be eternally happy tomorrow when I sit again on my tractor reflecting upon what I said today. That's my life today. It's not a bad life. I love it. And I love you for participating in this seminar. Welcome.
Bien, pues buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. President of ThinkForest, and all of you, thank you for coming here to Madrid, for choosing Madrid for this seminar, for this meeting. And I want to emphasize what an immense pleasure it is for me to open this seminar and to do it in Madrid specifically. I think this ThinkForest initiative, promoted by the European Forest Institute, has become a benchmark in the whole of Europe for discussions and debates on affairs related to forests, the forest sector, and forest management, forest governance, mitigation, adaptation to climate change, green economy, and most recently and most relevantly, the concept of bioeconomy, whereby forests and forestry must play a fundamental role. And I think the topic we've chosen for today's seminar is very relevant, very appropriate to the challenges we are facing as a society, specifically in the case of Mediterranean countries like Spain. We are all aware that forests contribute to those social, environmental functions and roles that are interrelated and are multiple as well. A very important one is to provide employment and provide income to the rural population, who in our country is facing depopulation in the rural environment. And that problem contributes very significantly to the increase in forest fires. And beyond providing employment to our rural population, this also provides the raw materials, the products that are so necessary for the industry, and contributes to the fertility of the soil, prevention of erosion, and they play a very relevant role in the provision, in the water supply. And that's a challenge for us in Spain as well, having drinkable water. And that contributes to facing environmental challenges. Spain has more than 55% forest area, which is above the European average of 40%. And not only those environmental services are important, but also forest-related products are very important to our rural population. I'm talking about cork, resin, and hunting as well, or mushrooms and related products. Therefore, the strategy of the European Union in the field of bioeconomy focuses on the future of forests. In this case, forests have to be oriented to that sort of production of wood products and services such as energy, which are very present in the field of forests when satisfying demands from society. At the same time, the European strategy and its application needs to allow us to be able to face more successfully all the challenges to our woods and forests in Mediterranean countries, namely forest fires. Forest fires have become a global economic and environmental challenge, which is more and more important. We see it every summer. We are facing forest fires in the Mediterranean region every summer, and that provokes not just environmental and economic damages, hard to solve and to manage, but most importantly, it provokes casualties. So as a society, we need to be deeply committed to facing this problem with all the tools that we have, not just in extinction, and Spain is very well prepared in that case, but we also need to be ready to use other tools such as bioeconomy. Bioeconomy is useful and has to be useful to attain that goal. And most specifically, we need to focus on using all the tools that we have available and focus on prevention measures in order to reduce the risk of fire in our forests. So bioeconomy can be a solution for prevention, and the Spanish prevention strategy for Horizon 2030 is going to be very important. It was approved in 2016, and it relates to the European strategy. It focuses on forests and their byproducts, their services, in order to promote a more ecological, economic, and sustainable system in our economy. And it clarifies things in its relation to circular economy. The Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and Food in Spain has completed a whole plan for forest management, trying to involve forests and services in Spain into this framework based on circular economy and bioeconomy. And I think there are two important measures in this respect. I'd like to talk about them, and they are very relevant to the topic we're dealing with today. And I'm talking about the prevention strategy for forest fires based on two aspects. First of all, awareness raising in society in relation to the importance of forests. We're not just talking about behavior or risky behaviors of people visiting the country at the weekend, for example, but rather also on how the use we make of forests and forest-related products contributes very directly to that goal of preventing forest fires. We think that awareness raising in our society about the use of forests and their products contributes to forest management and to preventing depopulation and forest fires. That's very important. And I would also like to talk about innovation in the forest sector when dealing with these challenges that our forests are facing, our Spanish and European forests, such as forest fires, the improvement of forest management, lack of competitiveness, and also not such a good use of wood products, which provokes the abandonment. And last year we had a focal group, a group of work which held a debate and came up with a series of solutions to the challenges, the most important challenges to our forest sector. Some of the ideas dealt with there have been incorporated into our work teams, and they are also getting European and national funding from EAFRD, and this has to be part of our policy for rural development. That's what we think, at least at the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, and I think this is essential for us to have resilient, productive forests able to face all of these challenges and to face climate change. We want to turn these innovative ideas into real solutions for the forest sector. And in this respect, the Spanish forest sector is playing a leading role, and I would like to thank the sector for their response to these initiatives and this work that we are doing, which is essential to our goals. And that said, I think that our meeting today has to be very productive, very useful, and I think we will be analyzing key factors when reducing the risk of forest fires, but we also need to focus on that proactive approach in the long term. It's not just about cleaning a little bit for this summer, but rather to be proactively thinking about the long term and focusing on forest management. We need to go beyond the extinction-based approach in order to focus on prevention and on using bioeconomy. I think this is the key message, and I'm convinced that all the discussions we will be having today will be very useful, productive, and need to contribute to the attainment of all the goals that you and I are expecting of this seminar organized by ThinkForest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I want to underline the applause. It was an excellent start for our seminar with a very clear and precise message. The forests are in many parts of Europe the answer. Use them, take care of them, and get revenues to the rural sector and a new way of life. That's good. Thank you. Now I invite a representative for the European Union, and he will speak about the role of CAP in forest fire preventions. Ignacio Seoane, Deputy Head of Unit in the Agriculture part of the Commission. Please take the... Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director General, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It's a real pleasure to be here today and to participate in this seminar on behalf of the European Commission. And I would like to thank ThinkForest and the Ministry of Agriculture for inviting the Commission to this important seminar. This is a crucial day for the common agricultural policy and our rural development policy. In this very moment, the College of Commissioners are discussing the future of the CAP, and they are supposed to adopt today the legal proposals for the CAP post-2020. It is always very important for us to participate in these sort of seminars where we reflect and discuss on how to protect our forest, in particular after the devastating effects of last year in many European countries, in particular in the Iberian Peninsula, in Portugal and Spain. This is not new for us, and forest protection has been a matter of concern at European level since the 80s, in particular since Spain and Portugal joined the European Union. From that very moment, we have implemented at EU level specific measures to protect our forests against fire. These forest fire prevention measures, since the Agenda 2000, since 1999, with the establishment of the rural development policy, have been integrated in our rural development regulations. Rural development policy has three main objectives: primarily to promote the sustainability of agriculture and forestry in the European Union. Secondly, to promote the endogenous development of our rural areas, the diversification of economic activities and the creation of growth and jobs in Europe's rural areas. The third objective is to base our policy on subsidiarity and to allow the member states to establish the rural development programs according to the specific needs and characteristics of the different countries and regions. The rural development policy has evolved since then, and under the current programming period, 2014-2020, forestry measures have been grouped under one single measure, which facilitate the establishment of integrated approaches and more value added for possible beneficiaries. We provide support under rural development for afforestation and creation of agroforestry systems, prevention and restoration of damage to forests from forest fires and natural disasters, investments improving the resilience and environmental value of forest ecosystems, and also investments to enhance the economic dimension of sustainable forest management in technologies, in processing, mobilizing and marketing forest products. These measures are also supplemented with other type of horizontal measures equally important when we provide advisory support to forest owners, training and support for innovation in the forest sector. All in all, under the current rural development programs, approximately 8.2 billion euro of public expenditure has been allocated to forestry measures. Out of this budget, some 2.2 billion euro has been programmed for afforestation and development of agroforestry systems, about 1.7 billion euro for prevention of damage to forests, around 800 million for restoration of damages, 1.5 billion euro for investments, enhancing the resilience and the environmental value of forests, and more than 700 million euro for investments in improving forest technologies. I would also like to mention that the EU has also been funding research in the field of forest fires over the last 2 decades. Earlier this year, in February, my colleagues from DG Research organized also a workshop on forest fires in Lisbon, in Portugal, where we had the opportunity to present the main results of all these research efforts. Over this period, we have implemented more than 50 research projects at EU level, from large integrated projects to more targeted ones, with a total EU financial contribution of more than 100 million euro. This is not only support that we provide to enhance the prevention of fires in the field, but it's also to enhance our knowledge about the main causes of forest fires and how prevention strategies can be improved in the future. Coming back to what we are doing, I have to underline that under rural development and in line with the EU forest strategy, we promote the protection and the sustainable management of forests. We also support the competitiveness of the EU forest sector as an important element in this respect. The analysis of the causes of forest fires in the EU indicate that the majority of them are human-related, either negligence or, what is much worse, arson. Experience and knowledge also show that the abandonment of forest management means multiplying the risk of fire considerably by increasing the combustibility of the forest and generating fuel models of greater difficulty for extinction. Well-managed forests are necessary to face climate change and to prevent fire. On the other side, well-managed forests bring a substantial support to EU climate policy by contributing to our mitigation goals and by replacing fossil-based products through more sustainable, innovative products. In promoting sustainable forest management, we should remember that the economic viability of forestry remains a key pillar of sustainable forest management. Economic viability is of crucial importance for maintaining the multiple benefits that forests provide to society, and especially for providing a living for rural populations. The development of the bioeconomy is indeed important for the forest sector and is also supported under our rural development policy. A combination of measures can be used by the managing authorities, such as, for example, investments in forestry technology, business development for supporting the development of novel products, knowledge transfer and cooperation for the development of innovative products. DG Agri also contributes with our research activities under the Research Framework Programme to the development of the bioeconomy. Looking at the future, all efforts for further boosting the bioeconomy should address the broad policy challenges and to establish greater coherence between relevant policies, our environment policy, our rural development policy, and our bioeconomy strategy. In this respect, as you probably know, the Commission is revising our bioeconomy strategy and action plan, and the revision is planned to be presented by the end of July. We are working very closely with our colleagues from DG Research and other DGs also involved in the development of the bioeconomy in this work. We have two main objectives with this revision. First of all, to achieve greater coherence between policies, between the bioeconomy and related policies, like energy, climate change, environment, and rural development. The second is to get a better integration of primary production from agriculture and forestry in projects and initiatives related to the development of the bioeconomy. We plan to organize a workshop on the 20th and 21st of September, when we plan to address these topics and also to lessons learned of the implementation of national bioeconomy strategies in the member states. I think that, of course, the forest sector will be well represented there. As to the future of the CAP for the period 2021-2027, the Commission presented in November last year the communication on the future of food and farming, which outlines the modifications proposed for the modernization and simplification of the CAP. On the 2nd of May, the Commission adopted the proposal for the EU budget for the period 21-27, the new financial perspective of the European Union. And as I said earlier, today, the Commission plans to adopt the new legal proposals for the CAP post-2020. The CAP post-2020 will have a budget of 365 billion euro for the period 21-27. This represents a small reduction, about 5% in relation to the current programming period. The policy will continue to be built around two pillars: direct payment to farmers and rural development. I have to say, concerning the EU budget, that an additional amount of 10 billion euro will be allocated under our research framework program, Horizon Europe, for support research and innovation in agriculture, forestry, and the bioeconomy. This is a substantial increase in comparison to the current budget, which is around 4 billion euro. It's more than doubling the budget that will be allocated for research and innovation for the development of the bioeconomy. The future CAP will provide a new delivery model, bringing the operations together under a single programming instrument, the CAP strategic plan. The policy will move from an approach based on compliance to a more result-oriented policy. Based on common objectives set at EU level, member states will have more room to match their specific needs with intervention schemes that they will set out in their national strategic plans. Within this new approach, a policy that is moving from an approach based on compliance to an approach based on results, the new CAP acknowledges that forestry represents a key sector in the transition towards a low-carbon and climate-friendly economy, and support for forestry will continue to be provided under rural development. Greater subsidiarity will provide more flexibility for better addressing regional and local needs and priorities. The future CAP will also support the development of the bioeconomy, and new business models will benefit farmers, forest owners, and will create new jobs and growth in rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suane from the European Commission. Now we have the honor to listen to Marcus Castelnau, Strategic Fire Analyst, Regional Fire Services, Catalonia, Spain, who will talk about forest fires, the big picture. And I think you will use some slides as well? Yes, so then I move down there, yes.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to do that presentation. As you know, I come from the civil protection field. I'm a firefighter. I represent here the fire service, and we are the ones dealing with the main problem or the dramatic times we have seen in the latest times. So I will talk about how we see the problem that is coming, how we are planning to move ahead, and how we are understanding what's happening. So as you can see in this picture, that's an entrapment. That's a situation where part of my crews was overwhelmed, because I want to leave one message clear, as you will see here. It's time for us, time has come for us, for fire service, to really make a statement. We don't need more resources. We don't want more firefighters, more airplanes, more engines. Please listen to that. We don't want more engines. What we need is a better landscape. What we need is better forests. If we have that, we then can do our job. We have to invest in our firefighters. Those guys there, they need training, they need knowledge. They can do their job. We have the best firefighters around the world, and we share a lot of experience, but we are losing ground. We are losing ground day by day. And instead of investing in us, in training us, in allowing us to do better jobs, we are investing in more resources. But more resources will not make the difference with confronting what you see in that picture. We are retreating. We are going behind because fire is overwhelming. And it's something you must understand. So I will talk about how we came from forest fires to civil protection, how we deal with the new event, which is mega fires, how we have to redefine the prevention, and how climate change is driving a problem that comes from forest management. So we can blame climate change. It's another excuse. Of course, climate change is playing a role, but at the end it's playing a role because we have the forests we have. That's an example of 3 big fires. The last 3 big fires, 2017. So you saw in the media Thomas Fire, California, the biggest fire in history in the United States. And Las Máquinas in Chile. We were there as Europeans helping also. And then Portugal. Look at the hectares per day. So Thomas Fire, the biggest in history in the United States, is nothing compared to Las Máquinas, which was almost 100,000 hectares, or Portugal, 120,000 hectares in 7 hours. Not in 20 days, in 7 hours. That's the tremendous and dramatic event we are facing. And we need to realize that. And it didn't happen because those guys were not good. No, no. That happened because that fire behavior was extreme. We are all around the world, we are facing that problem. So that's another picture from Portugal. I know Tiago is here. I will use a lot of the Portugal pictures today. I was involved in their reconstruction. Look at that picture. That transforms the forest fire problem into an emergency, a civil protection problem. Every dot in that map, it's a civilian death. It's a guy a person that died during the fire. So that's changing the pictures, and I will refer to that. Look at that, the example from June fire and October fire. In June fire, we lost the people mainly on the road, and that's what we expect, and that's what's driving our policies of no evacuation, use auto protection, leaving people at home, increasing home safety, all those issues. But then October fire, almost 50% of people died close to home or inside home. That changed the role. That means that what we thought it was our policy of civil protection was not affordable anymore. So just think about how we are reacting as societies in front of those problems. We are buying more planes, building bigger fire services, or we are creating prevention around the houses. But at the end, those two policies are failing when we refer to the new big wildfires. And that's what I want to leave clear. That example of Chile. Chile wildfire, that's the meteorology, that's temperature, and that's humidity in an island in the middle of the Pacific, 1,000 kilometers away from the fire, surrounded by water. That fire was able to change the whole meteorology of that island that night at 1,000 kilometers away. That came to show a problem that a lot of the scientific community deny it. They say, hey guys, you are firefighters, you cannot say that that fire changed the whole climate at a mesoscale size over a continent. And I say, well, maybe we cannot show it or cannot prove it, but you cannot deny it. And then it came to Portugal, and that's a windmill plot of the wind speed surrounding the fires in Portugal. Some of those are 100 kilometers away from, or 200 kilometers away from that fire. And you can see that's the October fire, that's the wind speed, that's the Ophelia hurricane going through Portugal that created the spread of all those fires. But then when the Ophelia hurricane was going north to hit Ireland and the wind was slowing down, then we have another big wind event. That wind event, the midnight, was the pyrocumulonimbus collapse of the fires in the area. Without wind, they created a firestorm that was bigger than Ophelia itself in Portugal. Again, that was confirming that those fires has the power to change meteorology at a mesoscale, at a continent size. That's the same than saying that we have a fire in the Guadarrama Mountains over Madrid, but that fire is being affected by the behavior of a fire burning in Corsica Island. Imagine if you will believe that. We will not, as we're not believing, but that's what's happening already. So that's a picture of Portugal fire. Look at that. That's a strike. That's a lightning strike from the smoke column, from the ice created by the condensation of the pyrocumulonimbus at more than 14,000 meters ahead of it. So that's the firestorm evolving in Europe. But this is not Siberia, this is not Alaska, this is not Canada. I don't want to say that's totally new. We've seen that in higher latitudes, in Siberia, in Canada, in Alaska. We've seen those fires, but we've never seen those fires in the Mediterranean. That's something that is becoming more common, but the problem of those fires is that they now are evolving in an overcrowded area, which is Europe. And that's really making things more dramatic. So if time when fire was used like this one, that's a fire in the Pyrenees, that we let that fire burn to manage our forests, that time probably cannot come back, and we are more dealing with those fires, but will be good for us if we could go back to those type of fires that we're managing our forests. So this is a clearer picture. Look at that. That's the limit, 10,000 kilowatts per meter. That's the limit we can deploy over the ground. Any fire service in the world, that's its limit of firefighting. Doesn't matter if it's Australian, American, Canadian, Spanish, Portuguese, French, that's the maximum limit. And that's the limit of units. And that's the type of behavior the fire in Portugal show based on 5 different weather stations. And as you can see, at midday, it went to maximum and then should have gone down, but that fire evolved at the end of the day to the big firestorm. So that's to say and to show again that our models, our knowledge of what's going on, it's all. I just came from a conference in Missoula, United States. We were discussing that, how we understand those fires. We are having fires that are a lot more worse that we can predict, and a lot more worse that fire still can understand. And that's happening because we are having landscapes that we don't manage, and that this combination of landscape that we don't manage and that we abandon with climate change is creating that type of fire. And that type of fire is dramatic because look at, those are 2 fires evolving at the same time in Portugal. That's Pedro Grau and that Gois. That's the hectares per hour. And look at the brown line and the green line, which is how many hectares per hour they were burning. And after 12 hours, they are playing the same game, or they are dancing the same music. But at the beginning, they are really different. Pedro Grau evolved to the firestorm. And same area, same topography, same fuel types, same weather. One of them goes wild, the other one does what was expected. And that's what is worrying. We are under problems. And for years, we've been saying that crown fires will be the worst type of fires. And those are the wildfires we must avoid. And doing forest management, we can avoid crown fires. But look at those pines, that's Chile. The crowns, they still have needles, they hasn't burned. And they are white, the black is at the bottom. That means it was a surface fire. Look at that picture in Portugal. Dramatic picture, but still, what came to my mind every time I look at that, and every time I look at that, my eyes just can't believe it. Do you see the crowns? You see the needles on the crowns? It's not a crown fire, it's a surface fire. That's changing the game. There's something going on that is not normal. And we must understand that, because if not, what is happening is not what we can predict. And if we cannot predict anything, then whatever the policy we do will not work. ¿Puedes dar al video? Look at this fire. It's a small fire, but look at, you will see some spotting. It's a really bad video from a phone from one crew, but it shows exactly what I want you to show. You see the small spots fire appearing, how fast they run, but you see how attached to the ground are they, how flat. If you listen to the descriptions of the firefighters in Chile or in Portugal, they will explain you that they didn't have any chance to fight the fire because there was not a line of fire, it was a surface on fire. And that surface on fire explains how we can get that extreme fire without having crown fires. What is happening here, it's an effect of the firestorm, and it's what we understood later on in Portugal last summer. Look at the temperature, maximum 40 degrees, but at night almost 30 degrees, and humidity really low, 15%, but at night almost 40%. What happened in Portugal happened after 8. So when temperature was really down under 30 and humidity was really up over 40, it's when the fire collapsed. It's when the fire changed from 4,000 hectares to almost 18,000 hectares. It just made the blow up at that moment, and without no wind. Instead, inside the fire, we saw more than 100 kilometer winds. What happened, it's easy to explain once you see this. What happened is that fire, suddenly, it was creating the smoke column at 3,000 meters, but suddenly the fire had enough energy to change the whole atmosphere, went to convection, and create a plume until 12 kilometers up in the atmosphere. That's a big chimney pushing a lot of air into it and creating a big downdraft of cold air over the surface. It's like creating a connection between the jet stream and the surface. And when that happens, cold air is pressing fire on the ground, and it's spreading like crazy. And that's the type of firestorm we still cannot predict. We only can understand. And we spend weeks to understand that. And that's just last technical slide. That's intensity, kilowatts per meter of intensity. That's the predicted, and that's the real. And that's humidity. What is predicted, and what we know is that when humidity goes up, the intensity of the fire goes down. That's a normal fire behavior. But look at that. The predicted and the humidity and the real one, as soon as the humidity starts to go up, it makes the blow up. That's a firestorm, and that's the collapse. And it's sensitive to humidity. It means now we understand that those fires, they need humidity, because when they create that big plume and you push humidity into it, then it creates ice, it gains weight, and then it's collapse. And that's dramatically important for what I will conclude. So out of that, look at this fire. That's a fire in October. You see the discontinuity there? So between 0 at night and 4 at night, that fire almost doubled the size with an area of 43% forest. It means it was less forest than farmland, but still the fire doubled the size at that moment. So what we are looking here, it's a direct danger to all our policies. Those fires, they burn bigger and faster when humidity goes up during the evenings, and they can spread in areas with less than 50% mosaic of forest. And that's a huge change in what we used to understand. And a part of that, we can try to simulate those fires, and still that's the simulation, and that's the adjustment. But that adjustment needs to be adjusted by more than 6 points. It makes 600% of the data, which is crazy. And we can do that because we know historical fires. But at the end, we realize that all of the simulations, the fire just burned 400,000 hectares and didn't burn 500 hectares because there was a mosaic of all fires. So at the end of those situations, what we understood is that those big fires, even in Portugal, even in Chile, even in California or British Columbia, doesn't matter where you look last year, they developed firestorms depending on the higher level of elevation of the atmosphere. They changed the methodology at mesoscale, at continent scale, and they were not responding to the classical approach of conditions that will improve or landscape management. So we have a problem here, and that problem is it's going to evolve worse. And as you can see, we had the problem in Portugal, but just think about one thing. We had the problem in Portugal, in Chile, in California, in British Columbia last year. All west side of the continent, all getting humidity from the sea, all getting humidity real close to get into those plumes and create those firestorms. And everything is happening also in areas with a really high fuel load. We need more than 20 tons per hectare of fine fuel. And when that means that we really need productive ecosystems. So at the end, we need productive ecosystems on winter time, but that suddenly they get hot on summer. And that's what we have seen with climate change. Those Atlantic areas and from Europe is going to be increasing the hot summers, and it's the area where that we have a lot more productivity in terms of forest, and it's also the area we can have those type of fire behaviors or firestorm we've seen. And that is going to happen in the area with more population in Europe. So we have a big problem here. Those fires doesn't stop at the classical prevention. Those fires doesn't behave following the classical fire behavior model. This is a new situation, and we need to use our knowledge to make sure those fires can evolve. We are trying that in all different parts of Europe, and as those are the areas that are worrying us the most, the Pyrenees, the Black Forest, and the border between Norway and Sweden. Those are the areas where all those conditions we've seen in Portugal, they can match to create fires that grow, and that's a staggering number. Portugal was growing at an average of 14,000 hectares per hour. There was not a long time ago when a fire of 10,000 hectares was a big fire, a disaster. That fire, those fires were growing at 14,000 hectares per hour. Chile was growing at 8,000 hectares per hour. I am not growing. I want to leave that clear. 8,000 hectares per hour or 14,000 hectares per hour. And what happens? We are confronting a situation where lessons learned here that has been evolving for years, those have not been learned there. But climate change suddenly is creating a problem. So areas that really have a lot of fuel on it are developing suddenly hot summers, like the northern Europe. Today, Scotland and Norway are burning. They come from the hottest May in history, and they have enough fuel, but now it's dry enough. And they can develop those firestorms because they are really in a cold area full of humidity. So that we can see it's fire of more than 100 hectares per day in those areas. And that means that there is no time to learn. There is no time to make the same mistakes we've been doing. We need to start managing the forest now because, as I said, we firefighters, we can manage to 10,000 kilowatts per meter, not to 200,000 kilowatts per meter. Doesn't matter how many planes we have. So that's a good example I would like to end my presentation. That's an example we did for Australia, and that's the same. Those are the evolution of the fire behavior in terms of kilowatts per meter. That's the Black Saturday day. 153 people died that day in that fire. And look at the fuel load. If we have 10 tons of fuel load per hectare, that fire wouldn't have done anything. If it had been a fire, we could have stopped easily. More than that, it's creating a monster. We cannot do anything. So it doesn't blame climate change. Still, with the worst climate on Earth, if we manage forest right, we can make it happen and make it safe and still have a land to live. So, thank you. Everything was clear over there.
Simulated for the future that are quite high risk. I've seen the northern part of the Alps, but that's quite different Black Forest in terms of humidity, oceanity of the climate.
Well, the Alps, when you have the south wave over Europe, you are creating the foam effect in the northern part of the Alps. So that means that that area, it's really getting humidity from the Atlantic normally, but then suddenly it shifts to a foam effect, really dry. So you have wet forest, wet land with a lot of humidity, but suddenly the atmosphere is ready to carry those fires on. It's like Galicia or Portugal. You can have rain today, but next Monday you can get the fires going on if you get the northeast coming in. So it's those fires, we are starting to understand that as soon as you get a fire when the column is higher than 5,000 or 6,000 meters, so it's not a normal convection, it goes really higher, then you start pushing humidity up there. That makes a whole lot of difference. It makes a transition from pyrocumulus to pyrocumulonimbus. And humidity is what drives that connection. So it's difficult for us to see a pyrocumulonimbus in Greece or in southern Italy or in Valencia or Catalonia or Andalusia. It's difficult, but it's really easy to see that in the Atlantic. And we never thought about it, and those countries are going to go from 0 wildfires to the worst wildfire we know.
Oh, good morning, Rui from Portugal. It was very, very interesting, your presentation. I just would like to have some clarification about what you said of the landscape. We always say that in Portugal we have too many forests, monoculture from forests, and that we shall have a landscape with forest and agriculture. But if I understood well what you said that even if we have a mosaic, you're not free from tragic fires. What shall we do?
Well, that's a critical issue. That's a critical issue, and I thank you for making the question. I don't know what to do. The problem is that we must identify that that's a problem, because that fire, when it goes down, it doesn't matter. You know that your people were telling fire was raining over us. And that's true. Fire was raining over our people in Portugal, like in Chile, or like in Colombia, in British Columbia. And that's the problem. When those pyrocumulus develop, then the basic mosaic doesn't work. So the issue is that it's at the beginning. Forests should not have that energy accumulated to allow that amount of energy to be released. Once that release, doesn't matter if you have a managed area in front or not, that will go. And that's the issue. It's a structural problem. It's not a design problem. We must take that seriously. And what happened in Portugal, I think it's clear enough. And it's nothing new. It happened in Australia. It happened in Chile. So since 2016 in May, in Fort McMurray, we saw the first, wow, never seen in history. Then we went to Chile. Wow, never seen in history. Then we went to Portugal. Wow. And then we went to Western United States. And I was talking with people here, and they was telling, well, this year is raining. Did any of you talk with California or British Columbia? They had the worst fire history after the wettest winter in history. Why? Humidity-sensitive fire development, pyrocumulonimbus. We're learning, and our policies are reacting to the fire of the 90s. We are already in the second decade of the 21st century. So we must run.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to the next contribution. Gavril Santopoulos, researcher from the Institute of Mediterranean Forest Ecosystem, and he will speak about effective forest fire management and policies. Do you also use slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. This is for... Okay, good. Okay. Yes. I just needed to find the button. Good morning, everybody. I want to thank EFI for having me here. I am honored. I'm going to talk about things that more or less all of us know. I will just bring in a different perspective and some ideas. I was very impressed by the talk of Mark. It's really putting in some new questions. I only want to make a comment that we have seen fires with cumulonimbus sending down rain to the firefighters in the past, many years ago. So it's not unknown, it's just the interpretation. And just to point out that the fires, these huge fires, they also have a lot of water in them, coming from the vegetation that burns, because the process of burning puts out a lot of water. And so the question is, do we pass a threshold in which this water contributes to the tower of smoke and gases and so on that creates this phenomenon? So let's go to my subject here, which is effective forest fire management and policy. I will start with definitions. We know them, but we need to remember them. Forest fire management, what is it? Because we are talking about this. The process of planning, preventing, and fighting fires to protect people, property, and the forest resource. It also involves fire to attain forestry, agriculture, wildlife, and land use objectives. This is a definition taken from the natural resources of Canada. And the policy is a set of ideas or plans that is used as a basis for making decisions, especially in politics, economics, and business. And this is from the College English Dictionary. Strategies and actions are defined in order to serve established policies. What is effective? Effective is producing a decided, decisive, or desired effect or output. And effectiveness, we define it as the degree to which objectives are achieved and the extent to which targeted problems are solved. In contrast to efficiency, effectiveness is determined. Oh. Sorry. I have to change it here.
Yes.
Okay. 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 So, here's the definition of forest fire management that I just read, and the policy. What is effectiveness? The degree to which objectives are achieved and the extent to which targeted problems are solved. And in contrast to efficiency, effectiveness is determined without reference to costs, and whereas efficiency means doing the right thing, effectiveness means efficiency means doing the thing right, effectiveness means doing the right thing. Having this in mind, the forest fire problem can be described by the total yearly burnt area is not decreasing in most countries in spite of large investments in forest firefighting. This is the problem that we have today. We have an increasing occurrence of extremely large, hard to control and highly destructive forest fires. We have a significant number of fatalities, increased property and forest production losses. The citizens are feeling unsafe and suffering adverse health effects. And there are high fire severities, lots of negative ecological effects, because this is a huge heat that is received by the soil, creating major long-term problems. Obviously, the general objective of forest fire management is to mitigate the forest fire problem. More specifically, the objective is to reduce the annual number of fires and the annually burnt areas, to reduce fire-caused fatalities and damages to properties and the environment, especially at the wild and urban interface, and to rehabilitate burnt areas appropriately. And of great importance in all this, in achieving this objective, is to control the costs in achieving the objectives and to achieve minimum disruption to ecosystem and production functions. Now, is current forest fire management effective? In short, does it achieve its objectives? Has it solved the forest fire problem? What about costs? Reflecting on the recurring damages around the world, it is clear that the problem has not been solved. On the contrary, it has worsened in many respects, especially in regard to costs. If we look at this slide, that's from the United States, and what we are seeing is the trend of, you see here the line which represents the suppression cost going up, the line which represents the area burned going up, and the line which represents the number of fires going down. So whereas the fires are going down, the cost and the area burned increase at the same time. That's an indication of a problem in the fire management of the United States. If we look into the European Union, we are seeing the data from IFIS. There are some inaccuracies in this data, especially I know from Greece, we don't report correctly. But anyway, we are seeing a general trend in the burned area which is, let's say, decreasing, but the average fire size is more or less steady in the last few years. And there is a pattern in the number of fires, which, although this is smaller, this shows that it is kind of dropping, but we have the events like the case of Portugal last year to tell us that we are having a problem there as well. And there are no overall cost statistics for Europe. I have not seen anywhere. So we are looking for the organizations that don't provide such data. And we have this type of problems, as you see, and I want to point out all the same things that were said so nicely by Mark, but I want also to show this. And this is something that I will discuss a little bit in the end. What I'm showing here is that these people were killed at a very short distance from their homes. And this is kind of showing lack of knowledge from the part of the people. That is, they were not prepared for this. Excuse me. And if we look in Greece in 2007, we have that picture, which is historic from NASA, showing how the fires were going all at the same time. This is the western part of Greece, by the way, which has smaller fires usually, but in this case it was extreme conditions, and it has richer vegetation because it receives more rain, very similar to what was discussed earlier about Portugal being on the western side. But we have the people again caught in the open, and we have exactly the phenomenon that Mark showed earlier. You see the spot fires here ahead of the convection column. This is about 10 minutes after these people were killed up there. It just came up over the hill, and immediately after that, somebody was recording, and you see many spot fires ahead, and as he turned his camera to the right, he sees this one, and then within 10 seconds, it's like this, which is exactly the problem why the firefighters cannot really cope with these fires. If you have a front to face, that's different. If you have fires on your back, in Australia they have counted more than 10 kilometers, some spotting, you cannot do much about it, as long as the conditions are like that. So it's worth to look at this. This is something that puts an example that might be useful in our talks and discussions in the future. We are seeing the trend of fire burnt area in Greece, and what you are seeing here is back there, before 1970, there were no firefighting trucks in the Forest Service which was responsible for fighting the fires. It was mostly the people fighting the fires, the forest guard ahead or the forest officer ahead, and the people would run to fight the fires. The fire service might come with a few trucks that they had with no four-wheel drive, staying mostly to the villages. And the people were able to stop it because the landscape was prepared. They knew where the previous fire was, they knew where the cultivated field was, and they used that and they backfired. They did use the backfire. And we have in my institute a publication of 1924 explaining the use of backfire in forestry. One of the first books written in forestry in Greece. So this has been forgotten as we got fire trucks, and we are seeing a trend going from 1977 on. What happened here? These are the 60s when the people were leaving the country, going to the United States as immigrants, to Germany, to Belgium, to Australia, and so on, or going to the large cities. And what we are seeing here, we are seeing how the rural population in 1960 was 44%, and it went down to 22% in 2015. So you're seeing part of the problem becoming obvious with this graph. And I think it's very important. We're not just saying how the people left the country, we are seeing it in statistics. And we are also seeing here the costs of firefighting. Here we have the cost of the Forest Service, which lost the responsibility for firefighting in 1998. And it went to the fire service. The budget of the fire service was before like that. That's the urban fire service. They took in the responsibility and they realized that it's not so easy as they thought. So they asked the government, give us more support with aerial resources. And the budget went like this. But if you look in the statistics and take 1998 and you go the years behind it and the same number of years after it, the average is the same. Surprisingly, the average is the same. The pattern has changed. What happens is, in the easy years, the fire service is doing an excellent job sending airplanes and helicopters to the grass fires. But in the difficult years, when the resources, the aerial resources, are not enough to cover all fires, then we have disasters like the ones that we had in 2007 with an immense burnt area, and not only that, 80 dead people. Okay? So how can forest fire management effectiveness improve? First of all, we need to develop a better understanding of the forest fire problem and its complexity, and to communicate it to decision makers and the public. For example, the things that were pointed out by Mark a little bit earlier are things that we need to understand. I don't think we have a full understanding. He just finds some things and puts in some very important questions that we really need to go in depth into those. Often the message conveyed to decision makers and the public presents a very simple picture of a complex situation. This was written in a paper that you find on FAO's site by Moore et al. In 2003, and it has 4 points. Forest fires are caused by extreme weather, which is not necessarily true. All forest fires are harmful, which is not true. All fires need to be prevented and extinguished, not true. Forest fires are periodic events best dealt with when they occur, definitely not true. This is what Moore said, and it encapsulates most of the problem in what is passed on to decision makers. And there are overly simplistic explanations of forest fires tend to encourage decision makers to the view that the firefighting is the main solution to harmful forest fires. Firefighting has some immediate results. A comprehensive policy requires long-term commitment. That's a very important point. If you have a politician, he has a 4-year term in front of him. So if you tell him, we need to develop this policy to do agriculture, to do bioeconomy, that's difficult for him to evaluate because he's probably not going to be in the same position, not in the same ministry, if not, probably not even in power. So he wants something that will not destroy his career this year. So immediately he will go for something that will have immediate results. And with this way, we have a catch-22, which we need to pass and make some jumps ahead, and part of what we need to do in this seminar is exactly that. Now, what we have learned through forest fire research is that a realization that an ever-increasing cost has to be devoted to fire suppression under the fire management approach of the last few decades. Recognition of the importance of fire prevention in managing fires. This has come out of many research projects. Realization of the futility of trying to manage fuels over all of the landscape through fuel reduction projects. We have to remember, we have to look in the United States. Why? Because they started their total suppression policy in 1910, so there was time for them to see the result, and the result was extreme fuel buildup, and they realized, the Forest Service recognized it by the end of the 1970s. And initially, they thought that they could control things with prescribed burning. But you cannot do it all across the landscape. The cost is huge. And especially in the last few years, they have added the concerns about smoke. And when you impose problems in addition to everything else, smoke that reaches the people, immediately you have less opportunities of doing prescribed burning. And prescribed burning costs become higher because you get the whole team, you go there to to do the prescribed burning, and you have a no-go because of smoke concerns. And so you say, okay, we'll postpone it, but this is a cost of all the people going there and having no opportunity to do the prescribed burning. So they have stopped trying to do it across the whole landscape. Wildfires are part of a coupled human and natural system. but the human component is neglected when trying to cope with them. This is a very important finding. We have pointed it out in a publication in 2016. Realization of the need to involve the public, education, motivation, use of the territory and its biomass, vulnerability reduction. This is something that is coming up all the time, and it's very much tied with bioeconomy. Increasing recognition of fire's traditional use as a tool for managing the territory. We should make mention to the Fire Paradox project that was funded by the European Union and pointed out many examples of the use of fire, both for firefighting and for managing the landscape. So, towards a more effective and efficient forest fire management, I start here and I say calling things by their name. And the first statement is what makes me say that. A strong firefighting capacity is needed, but it has to be carefully gauged and planned in order to be both effective and efficient. I have been, as advisor to the minister, in the coordination center. I have been in forest fires, in the front of forest fires, trying to organize firefighting and so on. And there is a time when you really need a lot of equipment, you really need resources to send when you are dispatching the forest fires. You say, if only I had 2 more airplanes to send, and so on. So this is very important. And it has to be understood that we cannot go away from this. Anything else that we will say, we first need to have a strong firefighting approach. But it has to be efficient, carefully gauged. There is a lot of money going down the drain. Not really good planning and good operation. So this is the qualification, the carefully gauged approach. We must recognize publicly that even the best firefighting organization cannot cope with 100% of all fires. That is, we have to say it to ourselves and to the public. All fire statistics analysis conclude that a very small percentage of fires create most of the damage. So there are cases when things are exceeded. But we must realize that trying to strengthen the firefighting organization towards the 100% worst case, the cost grows exponentially. At the same time, this reduces the funds available for prevention. Various studies have shown that €1 devoted to prevention may reduce damages plus firefighting costs by 30 to 40 euros. So, if we are trying to achieve this little better firefighting, the result is we are depriving a lot from prevention. That would be much better, let's say, spend money in order to have some result. And we really need to believe in fire prevention and work on it methodically. You hear about it in many cases, but you don't hear this methodical, in-depth work in prevention. A central objective is to reduce the overload load falling on the firefighting organization, especially in regard to extremes. If I have good prevention, I reduce the load that the firefighter accepts. And then I go away from this level at which the resources of firefighting are overpassed. The fire suppression objectives, I have a call here to finish up quickly, so I will not go into this, I will go into some more central points. In regard to fire prevention, I want to say that we need to prepare the citizens. That's very important. We need to pass the message that fire is unavoidable. There is no guaranteed protection. We have come to this point. And so our emphasis is learn what to do and prepare and how to act. While an urban interface preparation from municipality to individual citizen level to reduce damages. That is, we need to prepare our wild and urban interfaces because the fire will come to the doorstep of the people. And prevention needs to be a year-round effort. I'm calling in my country for this for years, and you don't see it. That is, there are no people devoted to prevention. It's always an afterthought just at the beginning of the fire season to make a good round table, discuss a little bit about prevention, and make a few spots. And the money that is spent, they are not in an optimum way, directed mostly towards the municipalities, which municipalities in their turn, they make, let's say, hydrants, roads, things like that, but not an overall plan that includes the people. And we need to involve people from different relevant fields to contribute in prevention because it is not the work of foresters or firefighters. They need sociology, criminology experts, educators, advertisers, etc. And here you see in a picture from Corsica, where they were using these guys doing prevention clearing and clearing this fire break in June 1999. But they told me that these people were previously thought to be arsonists. And they employed them and they used them as a special group that they, from the moment they used them, they had much better results in terms of both firefighting and the stop of arson. And you see the examples of France and the idea of using, let's say, grazing in order to reduce the fuels in their fuel breaks, versus the work which has to do get money to the people. You can do this only along the roads. You cannot do it everywhere. And you can do silvicultural treatments at the same time, achieving effectiveness in regard to reducing the fire loads and the difficulty for control of fires. I will go past this. I will say that we have declining forestry. This is a major question, and even forest fire research, in spite of what was said earlier about the money that we have spent, we have identified in that study two problems. One is, in the last few years, it has been declining, especially in basic research. That is, we go more like life projects and so on, which is application projects, but we also need to do some in basic research. That is, the problems have not been solved. The things that, for example, Marc Castelnau showed, they are basic research, they are not applied research. And also, we need to say that we have seen a lot of suffering in the forest management organizations. For example, we have seen the Corpo Forestale dello Stato in Italy being stopped. We've seen ideas before 2017 of reducing firefight, the people working in cleaning the forests in Portugal. These are not good examples what they are seeing. We are seeing something that I would like to propose here. We have a limit in developing, for example, new vineyards or new olive groves. But in the south, this is one of the most productive ways in which people can do it in the forest. And that's where, in the past, they would stop the fires. And we are putting limits to that. And actually, it would have to be taken in the CAP, in the Common Agricultural Policy, as an exception, the capacity to be able to do this within the forests, to encourage this within the forest as a fire protection measure. Not stopping them in developing new fields of olive groves and vineyards, under the condition that they will keep them clean. That is, that would be the requirement. Because this is exactly where the people, when they expected nobody else to help them, this is how they stop the fires. And resin collectors in Greece, for many years they disappeared because it was not effective being able to make an income out of this. But these are the guys who keep the forest open in order to go from one to the other. Thank you.
One or two short questions to this important intervention as well. Gentlemen.
Por consiguiente, estoy muy interesado.
I find these issues very interesting, and in my family,
Go ahead.
One.
¿Ya?
Okay. I mean, I have family members that do deal with forestry and with fire extinction in the woods in the Canary Islands, although I am Greek. Now, people who in the summer deal with fire extinction have less to do during the winter. Maybe they could be used to clear the underwood, for example. The problem is that the institutions are very policy prone, and they are not dealing with this in a very technical way. In Greece, how do you deal with this? What are the problems? Technology, financing?
For me, it is something that I was not able to show. This is in my conclusions. When I have firefighters that I use for cleaning, they're not necessarily compatible situations. I need to bring money to the people on the ground and have them with me in doing their everyday work and in contributing at the difficult times and working the other times in their area. I cannot bring firefighters from a different place every day to clear up some forest. If I count how much area they do, is much less than what the locals will do. The problems that we have to be pragmatic about how we work with firefighters. In Greece, we have a problem. In Cyprus, I have seen they have the same problem. I think in other places as well. You have people you take for seasonals, and once they acquire experience, somehow they become permanent. But in firefighting, we need young people. We cannot use people who are 55, 60 years of age effectively. When we do that, we end up with people that just come out of the fire truck and they just put some water. They cannot go in the forest, they cannot carry heavy loads, they cannot do many other things, and they are also easy to have a heart attack or whatever.
Next future, as we saw last year. So, sorry. This is different. Yeah. So we need to understand that it's a structural problem because it's not a technological problem. It's not a biophysical problem. It's a social ecological problem. So it's a problem, it's a biological problem, it's a social issue. And forests themselves are social ecological systems. So of course we have differences. We have boreal forest, controlled or limited by temperature. We have temperate forests limited by light. We have Mediterranean forests maybe limited by humidity. And the impacts of management will be different, what happens in the understory when we are thinning. But we also have different social systems around forests that shape how forests are. So in the Nordic countries, we may find globalized value chains with strong players in the global markets in pulp and paper, forest owners integrated in cooperatives, well-structured value chains. In Central Europe, we have a strong sawmilling capacity and in wood industries. We have a strong public forest that delivers to the industries. In the Mediterranean, we don't have these strong value chains. We have fragmented ownerships, owners not organizing cooperatives, and we are lacking the industries able to mobilize the resource. And these problems are difficult to address because it's not a matter of planning or a matter of will. It's a matter of making the social dynamics work, because society in the end is shaping forest as much as the climate or the geology. So keeping this in mind, I want just to come fast to what are the key factors that are explaining this structural problem of forest fires in Southern Europe and why we are unable to cope them. Of course, we have climate drivers, increasing climate drivers. We have more days of extreme conditions to come, probably. But we have already talked a lot about this, so we will not touch it anymore. The second key element is that we are living one of they call the strongest forest transition recorded. The expansion of forests has been extremely fast and extremely intense. In many regions in Spain, we used to have below 10% forest cover, 8% at the turn of the 20th century, even until 1940s, and now we are in the 60% Mediterranean France is approaching 50% or overcoming. Italy is growing in forest cover. So we have a huge expansion of very new forests. And this means that there's a lot of fuel continuity. But these forests are very young, very favorable to fire expansion, and very unfavorable to economics. They are forests with low value that require an investment to make them productive. And of course, we have a lack of tradition in forestry. It's forests that have grown in pasture lands, in abandoned lands. So we don't have foresters there that have been taking care of them for centuries. So it's a totally extreme change in the landscape, and it's a trend that is still ongoing. It's still ongoing. The second element, which is linked to the first one, is the very low utilization rates. We don't use our resource. So this means, so the percentage of the annual increment that we harvest can be as low as very close to zero, typically less than 20% in many regions. So we have expanding forests with increased fuel loads, increased biomass. So we don't have the capacity to manage. So this means that forest fires are the regulating factor in our system. Since we don't extract the biomass, it's fire that extracts the biomass and equilibrates the system. The third element, of course, is that we have also linked to the forest expansion in part. We have this very large urban-rural interface or forest-urban interface. Of course, it depends on the regions. It's linked to management. Sometimes it's the forest that has come to the houses. Sometimes it's that we have put the houses in the forest. And this, as Gabriel was saying before, this needs concerted action from planning, from urban planning, and from people very, very far away from the forest sector that didn't understand the risk. Of course, sometimes the urban interface is the main cause of fires, and there are positive correlations between the intensity and the characteristics of this wildlife urban interface in the ignition. So it's not only a matter of risk for the houses, it's also a matter of increased fire risk. And of course, we have a very high number of fire starts in Southern Europe. And we need to look, it is something that we really need to look at it carefully. It has said before, I think if we look at the Spanish database, we can say of fire causes, which is one of the most complete in the world, 93% are human causes. And we tend to look at them from a moral point of view. We try to distinguish if it was negligence, intention, arson, very intentional negligence, but what is the difference? An accident, a negligence, sometimes yes, it can be an arsoning. So we really need to look at, it's a human problem. If we look more deeper in detail what is behind, if we look, for example, at Castilla-León in the forest plan, we see that 75% are linked to agricultural practices. So we have still a rural population that uses fire as a tool to manage the landscape because the forests are expanding and I need to control forests. So the traditional tool is to put some fire on it. So of course there are of course other a bit of arsoning, a bit of conflicts. So in any case, it's an area that we really need to reflect more and understand much more better what is going on. And it's not just, we cannot just say it's arsoning or it's terrorism. So this is the case. When we use a traditional tool we use controlling vegetation with fire in a new landscape, which is totally forested, instead of having a 2-hectare fire, we have a 20,000-hectare fire. So it's a matter of a cultural change that we need. And for this, we need to work with people. And this raises a second question. Why, if we have a revenge, we will use fire? Why we put fire on the forest? Why not on the church of the village? Why not on the car of the mayor? Why we say, I'm mad at you, I put some fire. Why? And we believe, and we need some data on this and research, is that the lack of value of forest for people is a critical factor in the big number of fire starts, because what we don't value, we don't protect. So since we are unable to extract value for the communities, we have a higher fire risk. So as a consequence of these factors, Mark was explaining before, we have more fuel loads than ever, more continuity, so we have a different type of fires that we cannot cope with them. So there are many elements to say that we have suppression. In the case of Greece, that Gabriel pointed out in 2007, it was the biggest air operation after World War II in Europe. 18,000 people, 43 planes, 24 helicopters. Nothing stopped the fire. So when these situations came and when we're facing these big fires, there's nothing we can do to stop them. And this limit of suppression has different components. We have very efficient systems. We can stop 98% of the fire. But the 2% we don't stop make 80% of the damage. So increasing to 100% suppression becomes impossible. Second element is that the more we stop the fires, the more fuel loads we have, and the biggest risk of a next mega fire. So we are in this paradox. The more we stop fires, the biggest the next one can be. And the third one is that, in a sense, forest policy is hit-jacket by suppression costs. Some data from the US. The US, they say 1.7 billion is spent by the Forest Service. They estimate this is 50% of their budget. They say very soon will be 63, 67% of their budget to fires. This means less roads, less access, less rural tourism, worse conditions for wood mobilization. So this is really hampering the development of forest economy in the future. It's a pity that in Europe we don't have good statistics. How much is Europe investing in forest fires? 2 billion? 3 billion? Do we know? France is spending $500 million a year. France, who has a very small, high-risk area in the Mediterranean. And just about 2/3 is for suppression, 1/3 is for prevention. But we really need to improve our understanding of how much resources we put and where. Okay, so this is the picture. So what needs to be done? And of course, it's a complex problem. It has no easy solution. There is no shortcut to fires. What we need to do really is to change the structure of the vegetation at very large landscape level. We need to reduce field continuity. We need to open areas. We need to reduce forest loads. Of course, then we need to reduce fire starts. And for this, we need to create wealth of forests, because we cannot manage vegetation at this scale on public budgets. There is no subsidy scheme, no budget that would support this. So we need to develop wealth and self-sustaining systems. But the objective is to manage the landscape, the vegetation at the landscape level. Of course, we need more things. We need awareness, self-protection. We need people to understand, to develop a culture of fire again. We need many, many more things. So there you have vegetation at the large-scale level. What we need at the smaller scale, of course, we can fine-tune our silviculture to avoid light going and understory growing. So we can fine-tune our silvicultural regimes, and we can improve our clearing about infrastructures. At the mid-scale, we need open areas, and we know a lot about fire behaves, and so we can find what are the most strategic areas, the priority areas to intervene. So we can plan landscapes, and we can really open areas. And we must build on this forest, water, fire nexus, because what we need to reduce fire is very similar to what we need to improve water flowing to the catchments and to improve resilience of the forest. So we need to develop on climate change adaptation, water, and fire prevention to develop smart landscapes. But no matter how much we can plan, we can design the landscape. What we're missing is who is going to do it, and how is going to do it, and how is going to be financed. And this is here where the bioeconomy comes in the picture. And of course, this comes in a complex panorama of abandoned lands, old rural populations, lack of forest owner organizations strong enough, fragmented ownerships. So we need to understand all the socioeconomic issues, and we need to overcome them one by one. But there is no shortcut. We need to develop value chains and to sustain forest management through economy. And it's also, of course, about changing our mentality. This is why it's so important to address the territorial dimension. We need to work with people. This is the answer to the previous question, and I think what Gabriel wanted to say. We need to engage citizens, villagers, give them alternative tools to use fire. We need to help them manage vegetation. And we need to engage stakeholders around the landscape. And of course, we need to innovate and create value chains. On what? Energy is a low-hanging fruit. But if we are able to develop energy value chains, then we will be able to do much more with the biomass, probably. Once you have the biomass, you can do many things. So bioenergy maybe is an easy way, and maybe it's a way to go in the short term. We have non-wood forest products, we have resin, we have agrotourism. So we need to think about it. So let's change our mindsets. Now, forests in Southern Europe are a headache for governments, are a problem, are a sink of public resources, and are a headache for politicians. We need to look at them as a rich resource, a critical green infrastructure that we need to manage, and we need to find the ways to realize these values. So this bioeconomy, the bioeconomy has very strong drivers. We need to live in a post-oil era. We need to replace what we do with fossil fuels and non-renewables. And there are thousands of opportunities in construction materials, in aeronautics, in textiles, replacing plastics, glues, resins, agrochemicals, natural pesticides, green cosmetics. In everywhere you can think about, there are potential products, and there is a market pool, and it's increasing consumer awareness. And of course, we have also trends in nature-based tourism, in wild foraging, in green care, forest and health. There are many, many social megatrends that we need to profit. We need to understand them and to be able to supply them. And I've put here all these pictures on cork, because if there was not for a few companies that have invested in making cork, everything of cork, from aeronautical materials to race horses, to painted walls, floorings, innovative stoppers, we would think that cork was useless. Who could imagine that cork will be this? It's because we think it's normal, but it could be otherwise. So what else can we do with the Mediterranean forest? We have a huge biodiversity, incredible chemical richness, and emerging technologies to do almost whatever. We need to find the right economics. Also, so for example, and this is the bioeconomy, and this is the way forward. We need to innovate. We need to escape this paradox. We're in a trap, and we can only escape generating economic dynamics in innovative products. And some of these opportunities we explore in a report that we have developed. We cannot go in detail here, but we have quite an industrial base in paper, in chemicals, in tourism. So the companies are there. We need to learn these examples and make them from niche to norm. Opportunities are immense. So just to finish, I want to finish with just a couple of examples. This is PACA region in Côte d'Azur province in France. They have been for 10 years developing small boilers to use local biomass for heating. But they have invested not only in the boilers in municipalities with some subsidies, they have also worked with forest owners, making awareness. They have developed the logistic plans, and they have helped all the process from the supply to the final use. So it's a slow process, but it's deep and rich. And let me tell you, once you are able to put X thousand tons of biomass in a factory, there you will have investments and business. And this is what has happened in Castilla and León. Because of the global market situation, the Chinese exports of resin drying, there was an opportunity. And they've been able to overcome significant barriers to put in production and resination thousands of hectares of pines. And once you have the resin, you have the investments. So the Brazilian RB Group and new investors have developed new facilities to process resin to compete in the market. So if we are able to supply, the bioeconomy has the pull. And finally, it's about putting the bioeconomy at the center of territorial strategies. And we need to use all the tools we have, and I will finish with this. We have rural development measures, as explained before, are a magnificent instrument. We can do whatever we want with it, but do we use it correctly? If we look at where we are investing, we are using most of our resources in afforestation of agricultural lands where we have a forest expanding, and we don't use resources to manage those lands or for technological investments. So I think we need to shift the resources from expenses to investments, and we need to have this value chain approach from supply to demand. And we can do it with the instruments. It's a matter of using them correctly, and finally, to programming our measures correctly. This is the measure implemented in Portugal for fire prevention, and we see that it has not been implemented in the most critical areas, because the measure is being captured by biggest forest owners and has gone to the places where they are not so much needed. So there are many, we need to have a multi-dimensional approach, and we need to fine-tune all our instruments. But more than everything, maybe it's a change in mindsets. We need to really think about that we can innovate. And if we look at forest research in the Mediterranean, we have climate, physiology, soil, erosion, but you will not find a keyword on value chain, investments, governance, economics. So we are looking at physiology, we are looking at genes, we are looking at biodiversity, we are not looking at the social side, we are not looking at the business side. and this is a mindset that we need to do, all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. One short question. Concrete, direct, difficult, dangerous, but short. If not, thank you, Ignazio. I give the floor to Director Mark Falai, who will take care of the next phase of this seminar.
Thank you, Joran. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to be with all of you here today in Madrid. As it was mentioned before, it's our first ThinkForest event, Southern Europe in Madrid. And of course, as you can imagine, as a Spanish director, this is a great honor to be with all of you. I would like to thank the previous speakers, because I have learned quite many new things. And a lot of things have been said already about the problem of forest fires and also the solutions, to mitigate the problem. And even if Mark Castellnou has put on the table very new issues that at least I didn't know, and this means that still we need to gain more knowledge to address successfully the problem. I also believe, by the speeches and the messages by the previous speakers, including the Director General, that I think we have a common understanding on the problem of forest fires and also on the ways to solve the structural problem of forest fires. But as Joran Parson always says, one thing is to know what to do, another thing is to do it. And this is why now in the panel discussion, I would like to focus on which actions do we need at policy level to bring this understanding to action, to really address the root causes of the problem from the territorial way. And to do that, we have a very experienced panel. We have the persons from Italy, Portugal, and Spain that are in charge to solve the big problem of forest fires. So we have a very experienced panel, and I would like to call all of them to join me here on the table. Alessandra Stefani, Director General for Forestry at the Ministry of Agriculture in Italy. Margarida Tomé, Professor of Silviculture from Instituto Superior de Agronomía in Lisbon, my former supervisor in the doctoral thesis. But this is why you are not here, because you are one of the top experts on the topic. José Manuel Jacotot, Deputy Director for Forestry at the Ministry of Agriculture, and Tiago Oliveira, which is leading the special unit for Portuguese wildfire management. Since we are a bit tight in terms of timing, and I would like that you also interact with the panel, I would like to ask all of you to have very short interventions, maximum 3 minutes, or you will not get food after the event. So you need to be very, very short and sharp. So we will try to make it interactive. So I will be putting some questions to the panel, maximum 3, and then I will also open the floor for you to put questions or comment on the different issues. But let's start. The first question that I wanted to put to the four of you is, what is the most important lesson you have learned during your experience in addressing the problem of forest fires, and the related policy insight or policy recommendation or policy implication that you would like to bring to the audience? And I would like to start with my friend from Italy, with Alessandra. You can take the floor, please.
Oh, thank you to you all, and thank you for the invitation to this important discussion today. And I will try to give you an idea of the problem in Italy at this moment. The most important lesson I learned in my experience in addressing the problem of forest fires is that even if you can use the best alerting systems and the best fire extinguish techniques, you need the support of local people. Forests in Italy can be found mainly in inner zones, both mountains and hills. 10 million people still live there. If those people can feel the forests as a common good, and if they feel as private owner that forests can be saw as a source of income They will likely help to fight against forest fires. For example, not carrying out dangerous behaviors, raising the alarm as soon as possible, helping fire brigades. In my opinion, we can reach our goal thanks to two policies that we need to implement at the same time. Firstly, growing a really ecological forest culture, both in cities' inhabitants and in people that are still living outside the big cities, making them conscious that forests are common good worth protection. We need a correct communication about forest themes, extremely wiser than a mere emotional message. Moreover, offering real opportunities to develop a forest-related economy for private owners of forests. In Italy, we have 65% of private owners, and for each one of them, sometimes 1,000 square meters of property. And then we can develop from wood to payment for ecological services, from natural tourism to wild forest products. We need to take people back into forests, earning their life thanks to forests, without waiting for states' help.
Thank you, Alessandra. Now we move to Portugal. Tiago, I guess that you have had a long discussions in Portugal as well, and many things have been learned from the experience. If you would like to share some with us.
Good morning. You have seen a lot of pictures regarding Portugal, and the situation was really dramatic last year, and the government has established special units to tackle the problems and promote the cooperation between organic hierarchies within the states and within the private sector. And from what we have worked so far, we are trying to do a large transformation in the way the problem has been managed so far. It's not an easy process. It means a lot of endurance, perseverance, and leadership to change a system that is completely addicted to suppress instead of prevent the events. We were not tackling the causes of the problem, we were just mitigating the consequence. So it means old society today, after horrific fire season last year, with more than 100 people killed, understood that suppression resources are not going to solve the problem. We completely agree with Marc Castelnau when he claims you don't need no more engines, no more airplanes. They need to be better and wisely used, but we really need good policies, good agricultural policies that are able us to tackle the forest transition process. The rural country yard is no longer a farmer land. It's thousands of hectares of rural landscapes have become flammable with huge amount of fuel loads, which fuel the fire problem. Apart of that, there are a lot of industrial forest plantations, namely pine, eucalyptus and cork, that are no longer so competitive as they were in the past. So there's a lot of less attractiveness for the investor, private investor, to support the fuel treatments. So instead of looking for the fire problem through the lenses of the suppression scope, we are tackling the problem through the lenses of social ecosystem, ecological and social problems. It's a complex issue. But instead of observing the problem just by this new perspective, we are looking to observe it not as a cost. So who is paying for the prevention, but who is really investing in the coalition of efforts that we need to have on the future to have a different landscape. And that is really dramatic, because people do recognize that that suppression is not the solution. They are trying to understand who and how we are going to spend money in the prevention, but at the end of the day, trees are still the threats, and they are not yet the value. And this is a large change in the frame sets that we need to thrive for the years ahead, while we will try to survive for the fire coming seasons.
Thank you, Tiago. Good reflection. So we need a new vision to deal with the problem. And I think in that sense, the fact that also we need in the next decades to move from the current fossil-based economy towards a circular bioeconomy to address the problem of climate change, that can be also a good inertia to jump in, as it was mentioned before. Now we move to Spain. José Manuel, I guess you have plenty of things to say, but remember that you have maximum 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning. First of all, I would like to say that I love everything. I would say 90% of what I've heard today. And I will sign under every line. But the question is how to do it. We are showing the way, but nobody, we don't have, nobody, we don't have the way to do it. I mean, in our university, in the University of Forest Engineers in Spain, the motto is to know is to do. And now the question is, how are we going to say, how are we going to do these all big issues that we are explaining? We say we have to move the landscape, we have to invest more in prevention, and so and so. But how to do it? For instance, in Spain, 70% of the forest landscape is private. Are you going to spend money? Are you going to change this kind of, I would say, productive species like eucalyptus, for instance, to have a different, because for the forest fire would be better to have a different landscape? We have to go to this place, but how to do is very difficult. I agree with all of us that forest fire are an essential problem in Spain, as well as the whole Mediterranean area. And we cannot, you ask, what do we learn about our experience? What I learned the best is we cannot simplify a very complex problem. Ignacio said that there are many different reasons for the forest fire. Climate change, said Goran says the climate change. Gabriel talked about the population, so important in Spain. Lack or not good forest management. And as I said before, the only way to fight against this forest fire is through forest management. I mean, this gentleman, some before asked for, they saw that people, the workers were not doing a very good job cleaning the forest. Forget about cleaning the forest. Let's say manage the forest. To clean a forest is not a house, it's not a kitchen. A forest is something that you have to use. As our president said at the very beginning, we have to use the forest. I mean, let's say, I will finish at the end of my intubation about what I have in my email after my signature. Let's use the forest. This is the way. And I told you it's not so easy, because the problem comes with the question, show me the money. How can we do it? And for finishing, don't tell me to save money in suppression. Make a guess. All of us, we are minister of agriculture, of whatever. Are you going to save money for suppression? Really? No, I will not. I'm not going to be minister. But I will not. And what we have to do is to spend more and better money in forest management. This is the key word, I mean, to spend more and better money. But suppression, I will not save one euro. And I do not agree much with Mark. We don't need more resources. Maybe we don't need more resources, but you need more resources, my friend. We don't have in whole Europe the best situation. So spend in resources, in good resources, and spend much more money in forest management. That's it.
Thank you, José Manuel. So now, my dear Professor Tomé, and if I may ask a possible request during the fires in Portugal last year, also in the news it was very much repeated, also some NGOs were putting a lot of emphasis on blaming eucalyptus. You are one of the best experts on eucalyptus in the world. Also, there was some blames to the forest industry in Portugal, and I would like if you could make a bit of a reflection on that. If it is being live streamed, so you need to be careful what you will say, but it would be interesting to know your reflection.
Yes, I was not going to talk about species, but I can tell you that if you look to the report from the technical commission that analyzed what happened in the fires, that the species was not an issue. The issue was management, because they tried to compute the percentage of fires that occurred according to the species when it's managed and unmanaged, and the management was the difference. Poorly managed eucalypt stands, I didn't brought pictures, but that when we look to them, we see that they are terrible mixed with pine and with shrubs. Then those were the problem, not the well-managed ones. And in some cases, we saw some people now say that hardwoods will save the world. So, but I saw some hardwood stands that were a spot in the middle of the burned area, but I also saw some eucalypt stands that were live spots in the middle of the forest fire. So I think the species, of course, that there are differences among species, but that was not the big problem. Now coming to other issues, I will try not to be repetitive, but I have to speak about the same issues that other people talked, but I will try to say different aspects of the problem. People always complain about forest management, but when people talk about forest management, we have to distinguish two aspects of forest management. One of them is the planning of the landscape, so creating what we call a more resilient landscape that should be conceived as a mosaic of different units, stands and open areas and other things. And then we have the management of the stands themselves. And when people talk about forest management, I never know what they are talking about. And they have different problems, and they have to be solved by different methods. I think that the forest management, the Portuguese society after the fires, I think their idea is that us, foresters, we don't know how to manage our forests, is what they think. It's not true. In Europe and in Portugal, we have a lot of technical knowledge, and we know how to manage the forest. The problem is not technical. The problem is socioeconomic. That's the issue. And people usually don't think about that. So in Portugal, and I think that in most places in Europe, the structure of land ownership is not favorable. This is one of the problems. Very small properties that are scattered, the same property is scattered in small spots. And also, there's a big problem, that is the lack of profitability of most of the private forests. This is my field of work and research, and I've been working on that. And my findings show that except for some eucalypt plantations in good sites, because even the eucalypt plantations in not so good sites, they are not profitable nowadays. It might be that we are doing too much input for site prep and for I don't know. But in fact, they are not profitable. And so the best solution, the best alternative for a lot of private landowners is to do nothing. Because if they do nothing, the worst that can happen is not to earn nothing. But usually, they have some small income. So not doing nothing, you don't spend, you still receive something. If you invest a lot, at the end of the day, it's not profitable. And if a fire comes, it's even worse. So we have to look at this problem in my opinion. We have to find ways, and I will come to that because I cannot talk more than 3 minutes later on. And there's another problem, that is the population in rural areas. And I think that there is a changing in people's mentality. When I was young and I came from a rural area, what we wanted to have the opportunity to go away from our region to the cities. And nowadays, what I see is young people living in the cities, but they would like to go to the rural areas. But the problem is that if they try to go to rural areas, there's no opportunities of jobs for them. So I think that politicians have to think about that. They have to find ways to place industries there, or to give better incentives to young farmers, because nowadays it's not easy to be a young farmer. I'm still very connected to my region, and it's not easy. And one problem is that, at least in Portugal, incentives for young farmers totally exclude forest. If you are a young farmer, if you inherited a land, if you have a part that is forest, you get no incentive to clean the shrubs and to manage your forest. And just before ending, I think that I'm always suggesting in Portugal, but they don't hear me, that we have young farmers. We should have the figure of elder farmers, because there's a lot of people nowadays, they live longer, they retire, and they, like Goran, they like to go back to their places, and they have a difficulty in managing their lands and their forests, because the few incentives are for young farmers. You have formulas in Portugal, and then you get points, and you get points if you are a young farmer. You don't get points if you are an elder farmer. I think it would be a good politician, a good policy. Thank you.
A good round of first interventions, and I think forest management has been mentioned by all of you as a component of the solution, and also this socioeconomic aspect. And since we are talking about a structural problem, the problem of forest fires, we need also structural solutions. Ignacio mentioned the bioeconomy as a structural development that could really attract the necessary investments and incentives for forest management to develop resilient landscapes and generate wealth in rural areas. But how do you see the bioeconomy? We have now in Spain and in Italy bioeconomy strategies. We have the EU also revising the bioeconomy strategy. Forest was not very well reflected. We are trying to help now the Commission in the review version to ensure that forestry will be more clearly identified as a fundamental pillar. But do you believe in the bioeconomy? Do you think that the bioeconomy can make the difference? And again, how to do it? We're going to start from you, Alessandra, because Italy also approved a few months ago the Italian bioeconomy strategy. Were you happy with how the forests were addressed in the strategy?
No, we are not happy. In bioeconomy strategy of Italy, the Ministry of Agriculture was not present in the elaboration. So we are we don't agree at all with this strategy, but it was a lack of presence. Mm-hmm. We really believe that developing a forest bioeconomy in Italy will be the key. Not only to address forest fires, but also to maintain people in the terminal zones, earning their lives in a semi-natural context. We really believe that the forest bioeconomy can be supported by Italian forests. Wood, wild forest products, we prefer this term to non-wood products, in according to Professor Petanella, who said in Sardinia a few days ago. Cork, eco-recreational tourism, health, and so on. Unfortunately, at the moment, forests are not a pillar in the National Bioeconomy Strategy approved in 2015. During the last year, Forest General Direction has been created in the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Forest Policies. In April 2018, a new national forest law has been approved, especially focused on encouraging forest bioeconomy in accordance with regional forest policy. The new forest law and the Forest General Direction will play a key role in the discussion of or renovation of national strategies, until now usually written without talking with the competent Ministry of Agriculture. A totally new national forest strategy will be written next year. With the contribution of Environmental and Cultural Heritage Ministry and the Regional Forest Department, the strategy will collect the better statements from the other strategy, biodiversity, bioeconomy, energy, and will try to draw the future of an ecological, sustainable forest management for Italian forests. Reducing fire risk with silvicultural intervention will sure pillar of the new strategy, in line with the specific article in the previous mentioned law.
Thank you, Alessandra. Spain, Jose Manuel, are you satisfied with the...
No.
What is going on?
No. First of all, I would say, in bioeconomy, we trust. No, this is the first declaration. And I think as you can't imagine bioeconomy without forest. It's so easy. Bioeconomy and forests are together. Well, in Spain, now, not as much as we would like, but we are trying to include forest management inside the different strategies that now are developing. Forest Action Plan, Climate, Agriculture and Environment Strategy, including the forestry sector. This is something that we include. The new law of climate change and energy transition, Spanish strategy of bioeconomy Horizon 2030, and Spanish circular economy strategy. That means we have tools enough, and our job, and I'm talking about forest managers, is to get the forest management inside those strategies. As I have said in different places, climate change is a big opportunity for forest sector. I mean, everyone here understands that forests are very important, forests are a big issue for the climate change mitigation, but outside they don't know. And the difference between Kyoto and Paris, in Kyoto nobody talk about forest, in Paris they say forests are important. It's the first step. We are forester, we are patient, we know that we need time to do things. And all those strategies that I said, it's a long, long way, my friend. We are not going to reach the solution very, very quickly, but I think we are in the good way. And my wish would be to create a national bioeconomy plan built from the demand of the market, I would say. This is a Mediterranean country. We don't have the production that you have in the north of Europe. Okay, the boreal forest, they produce like crazy. We need to know what the market, the society are willing, are demanding from our forest, and to give to them. And it would be my wish. But for finishing, I'm saying that I have to present some kind of project from our ministry. I take care to have this project inside forest fire, climate change, depopulation, or water. Those things are very well understood by our politicians and by the society. So let's use it, and we are trying to include forest in those strategies according to these issues. Okay?
Thank you. I think we need to be more successful in presenting and creating an attractive narrative from the forest side. And I think one of the reasons, personally, I believe that the focus in fighting climate change in the last decades has been very much put on the energy sector, in providing renewable energy. That has been a very successful narrative. But don't forget that is part of the solution, but in the next decades, all these industrial sectors responsible for producing all materials for construction, textiles, packaging, transport, shift from fossil and non-renewable materials like plastics, steel, concrete, to renewable biological resources, or we will not be successful in fighting climate change. And I think this is our hook, you know, is the moving towards renewable materials, bio-based, that are in principle carbon neutral. So we need to start developing this narrative and then link to the urbanized societies. The plastics issue is there on the media all the time, and we have the solution also. Bioplastics are possible now. Some forest industries are producing that. But I would like to open the floor because I think you have been silent for quite a long time. And before I continue with the panel, better to open a bit and then we continue with the panel. So if you have any comments from the public or questions to the panelists on some of the issues that have been mentioned so far. And you will get your drinks afterwards. So yes, here, one question. And then, Eduard, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Sara Tuksen, and I'm First Secretary at the Embassy of Finland here in Madrid. We definitely believe in bioeconomy because forest is pretty much all we've got in Finland. And what I've been wondering during my time in Spain and also today is why the productiveness or whether it's profitable to have forest is so different in the Mediterranean. Is it because the forests are, I mean, we've mentioned management, but then there's also, I've heard that it's because they are more difficult to reach. So maybe if I could hear something to clear my doubts on that, that would be great.
Thank you, Jose Manuel, but please be short because this you could make a doctoral thesis on that question.
I don't know if... Don't get so excited. I don't know if I understood very well your question. You know, in the whole Mediterranean, we have a very different landscape, climate, and management. So we have a very productive forest in the north of Spain. But to get this productive forest with the landscape and the climate and the use of the land and the tradition of the land is very difficult. So we have to change those productions. We have to see what the market, what the society is asking for. I mean, for instance, non-wooden products. Hunting is very productive, and we are not considering in forest production, in forest, and I don't know now all the tourism, the ecotourism, and so we have to develop it and to get the money from it. Because if we don't take care of the money in our forest, nobody will take care of it.
Thank you. Well, and now.
Yes, good morning, Eduardo Rojas from the Polytechnic University of Valencia, and the Forest Professional Board of Spain. It's difficult to argue to everything that has been said. I think congratulations to EFI and the excellent conference. I wanted just to focus on 2 or 3 issues. First, the similarity to the health, food, and healthy lifestyle debate. There's been traditionally the delivery approach, that we have to create bigger and more costly health systems. And where the World Health Organization is insisting today, what we really need to have is much more healthy lifestyles, much more healthy food, instead of investing just in the delivery. And this is very similar to the firefighting investment or the overall resilience, more than prevention. Prevention can be confused with minor issue, with the healthy landscape issue. A second question, I think it's important, some have started, the risk to distract. and the very negative role that NGOs play in general. There's some exception, with confusing about the species, about climate change, about the fire cause, distraction attention from the key issue. And the third issue, of course, is the common agricultural policy. I mean, the figures of Spain are not, in comparison, that bad. It's about 3% of what Spain invests in the common agricultural policy with EU funds and own go to forest. 55% of the area, where 40% gets 97%. But on European scale, we have more or less the same area, agriculture and forest. 1% goes to forest, 99% goes to agriculture. And it is due to the fact that we have not honored what it was decided in '91 with the start of the common agricultural policy reform, that Pillar 1 would be just transitional for softening the consequences, and everything would move to Pillar 2, which is much more market coherent and where rural development would be crucial. And there is, of course, an issue of resources, especially because agriculture ministries are used that everything is paid by the EU and they only co-finance. It's very difficult that forests suddenly became a source of resources. Without discussing that, what Ignacio presented, that we have to invest much more in the demand side. I think that is clear, but without resources, it's difficult. And then there are two issues very important, what our Greek scholars comment on the olive issue. This is, again, a typical blockade issue. What the former president of Germany said, the political dictatorship of status quo. The issue of vineyards. Vineyards should in the free market. It's just luxury resources. But by fossilizing vineyards, we keep them in the lowlands where they have no differentiation of quality for producing at the end alcohol or vinegar, instead of moving the vineyards to the medium mountains where they are incredible fire breakers for free. They are much more differentiated by quality, but it is very difficult to invest in vineyards by paying first 4,000 euros for another one to take the vineyards in an area without quality and then start production for the next 10 years, investing in enology and so on. So this fossilizing is very negative. Another element is, as we have not differentiated in the agricultural policy, it is extraordinarily inefficient, territorial as well. But we have over in Europe today is intensive agriculture and livestock. And that's why there is no certification of meat coming from excessive grazing. What we have in fishing. You buy fish, you know if it is aquaculture or it's normal fishing. In meat, it is impossible. So at the end, what is over in the market is intensive livestock, because there is no differential price for the extensive meat, which is much more healthy. So at the end, there is this kind of feedback of the intensive agricultural lobby that imposes policy and market conditions, and at the end, extensive use, including forests, but not only forests, also livestock, it's dropping down.
Yes, thank you, Eduard. Yes, let's go for another question. Alvaro Picardo, and then here, and then I will come back to the panel. Otherwise, they will start talking to each other, and this.
I work for the regional government of Castilla y León. And to me, the most relevant question is what José Manuel mentioned. What should we do? We know what the problem is, but what should be done? And I want to pose a question. Is that what have other regions done to get really a difference in this problem? Because forest fires were very serious problems in the east of our region during the 19th century. But Soria, the province of Soria, doesn't burn right now. And something has been done. And the Basque Country burned until the 80s, but now it's not burning. And the best example in Southern Europe is Aquitaine. And I'm missing the region of Aquitaine there, because they know how to succeed. And the question is create value in the forest. It's easy, but it cannot be done only from the forest sector. We need the fiscal sector. If we do not pose a taxing criteria that really facilitates economic activity in the forest, the Mediterranean will keep on burning.
Good, thank you, Alvaro. Any immediate reaction to Alvaro's comment?
No, I do agree with him. Alvaro said a problem that not a problem, well, the real situation in Spain. We have 17 regions, and they manage the forest, and they manage the forest fire. So we are trying, and we are in some issues, we are in a very good way, in a very good shape with the regions, but this is 17 problems to be solved. And I agree with you, I told in advance, we need to produce, we need to put money in the forest. We need that the money, the forest produce money. Then we will take care of it. But just for finishing, I would say, we do have to blame only the administration talking about forest management. We can't. Forest managers, forest owners, private forest owners, they have to move. And I think, maybe because we don't have so much money in the Mediterranean forest, I say that they are not moving so well. I mean, in the Basque Country, they move very well because they produce money. The forest owner in the Basque Country, they get money. They manage very well. They don't have forest fire, by the way. There's no forest fire in the Basque Country. And Cantabria is by the Basque Country, they have a lot of forest fire. What is the question? It's up to the way of managed by their own.
Thank you, José Manuel. Tiago, do you want to react?
Yes. Well, to avoid large fire events, we need to remove the fuel load, mainly the shrublands, the understory vegetation, which has a higher cost due to the higher cost of labor, because they used to be manual, empowered by people. So, on the long run, we are looking for solutions that treat the fuel load through mechanical treatments, prescribed burning, or game or silvopastoralist activities, which also cost money. So what we have is a large amount of land with high productivity where fuel accumulates. This is on the one side. On the other side of the equation, we have a market pool with a lot of people earning money from forests productions, which means pulp, cork, wood for constructions, ecotourism, a lot of other uses of the forest resources. But in the middle, we have a need to share value with the forest owner. So we have a governance resource problem upon a fire management problem, which is even more complicated situation for a socio-ecological problem. So no technology will solve the problem, it will help to solve the problem, which means there's a lot of need to bring the policy science and economics into the equation in order to solve the problem, which is no longer a technical or just cost issue. So we have a governance resource problem that's driving a risk governance issue with a lot of needs to act on the ground to solve an operational fire risk problem. It's a really complicated situation with the need to bring the most knowledge and most institutions to have better technicians, to have better political advice, and to have inform better the politicians to act properly with the constructive and long-run policies. It's a call to action.
Thank you, Tiago.
May I say
Margarida,
something?
yes, please.
I totally agree with Álvaro that we need to create value in the forest. If we don't create value in the forest, then we cannot have good forest management. So I think that we have to find ways to create this value. And one of them, for instance, is to really give value to the ecosystem services of the forests. In the Mediterranean region, this is very important. And even if we want to compute this value, there's a lot of literature, but we don't have any framework to do it. In Portugal, for instance, we are revising our regional forest plans, and I've been involved in some of them, and I wanted to compute the total value of the forest. And I found out that I can use different methods that give different values, and there's no framework agreed among everyone in order to compute this value. This is one problem. And another problem is that, at least in Portugal, most of our forests are not producing their potential. Again, in the regional forest plans, I did some simple calculations on the basis of the areas and the site indices, and I tried to compute how much should we offer in wood and cork and so on, and biomass for energy, and then I found out that they are offering much less. So there's a disagreement, even discounting the impact of diseases and insects, and even discounting the impact of fires. Still, they are not producing what they should, and I think that we should look at them and find what is wrong. If they should be producing more, why are not they producing so much? So I think we have a lot to do.
I think basically I think we all agree that we need the right long-term predictable policy framework. And it's not only about fiscal is part of it, but we need also public procurement policies at the end. We are coming to the same thing. It's how do we develop an ambitious, sustainable bioeconomy for the future? And there is a set of policies and a bit of advertising. We just produced in Natio coordinated a document. I recommend that you have a look. It's about the strategies or a strategic approach towards a circular forest bioeconomy in Southern Europe, where we are reflecting on all these things there. So I advise you. We are arriving to the end. There was a question here, then Gabriel, and then I will have a last set of questions for all of you. So micro here, and then to Gabriel, and then 4 questions for you.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Gonzalo Anguita. I'm coming from Forest Stewardship Council. This is a certification system for the forest. I hope you know it. And my question was about environmental services. So Margarita, you were talking about this, but if we know that forests are key for environmental services, but we haven't found economic value change based in those environmental services. So my question would be, where are the incentives for the foresters or for the forest owners, and how we could develop this value change? Some reflections from you, and also from you from Spain. This is regarding the natural capital markets, why we are so far off getting or reaching these goals.
Who wants to start? Alessandra?
I try.
Yes.
In Italy, in a law in 2015 started to speak about ecosystem service payment, but we have not the consequences on in a practical way. Mm-hmm. And the law allowed Environment Ministry to produce the consequences of the statement in the law. So at the moment we are stopped, and I believe that with my general direction I will try to state a table with the Ministry, Environment Ministry, to try to have a new way to really work in this way. And I would like to answer to the problem of the fiscal problem with the experience of Italy, if I can explain. In 1994, there was a law that allowed decreasing of taxes for the people who done forestry management. In the first year, it was not known. In the second year, more known. The Minister of Economy stopped it because of a problem of budget. So, this is a real problem. In 2017, I tried to discuss another way, the same problem. We tried to pass the taxes for forest management. They told me how many owners, forestal owners, are in Italy to have a budget for the people who can reach this measure. I don't know. We don't know number of private owners. It's different from the Azienda Forestale, and this is a problem that the Ministry of Economy told to us. And is not a full stop. I will try again, sure, but in the future, okay?
Thank you. José Manuel, you want to add?
Yeah. We have somehow the same problem than Italy. We don't know how many forest owners are in Spain. Nobody knows. We are going to investigate it, and we have a project to know it, but we don't know. But this is the same problem. Talking directly to environmental services, as you very well know, is not solved up to now in Spain. But we are trying to include it in the different strategies that I said before, especially in the climate change new law. And we are now, in these days, negotiating with the Ministry of Finance to get some kind of, I would say, payment or a benefit for environmental services. But the question is easy. Up to now, it's not solved. But we are, I think, in this case, in a good way. If we get, I don't know what will happen with the government for the next year, for the next days, but we'll see. But we are in a good shape now.
Thank you. Eduardo Rojas made a very good reflection on the CAP, on the Common Agricultural Forestry, Common Agricultural Policy. Ignacio Seoane showed some impressive numbers also. We have seen that 30% of the forestry measures were devoted to prevention and restoration. I have some data here also that in the period 2007-2013, 8 million hectares were treated through these forestry measures under the prevention. So I think the forestry measures under the CAP have played a role, but I would like to hear your opinion on the past and especially looking at the future. Ignacio Seoane mentioned that today is a big day in that sense. I don't know what it means, but maybe it would be nice to hear your reflections towards the future based on the past experience. How do you see the future and how you would make it more effective? Ignacio also mentioned before that only 10% of the budgeted was for productive investments. So that is shocking because at the end we all say and agree that the future is bioeconomy investments, but then the money is still going to the old paradigm in a way. So how to shift in the future this, that the money really goes to productive investments and we attack the root causes. So who starts? Maybe now from Portugal, Tiago? Not more than 2 minutes now, because food is getting...
I think most of the issues regarding common agricultural policy, regarding forestry, and regarding fire is to understand that climate change is really an opportunity if it's properly tackled through the institutions, which is to say that the second pillar is the way out in order to support forest and agroforestry systems. The first pillar is no longer fostering the critical and structural changes that are needed on the landscape. So we really need to modernize and to enforce good institutions for better use of the second pillar resources in order to address the fire risk management issue, which means removing herbs and shrubs from the landscape at a faster pace than the one that they are being accumulated by the rain and the sun. So what's really need to be done is to adapt the organizations to this new perspective on managing the process of climate change and the way we are managing the landscapes through the money of the second pillar, I think is the way out.
Thank you, Tiago. José Manuel, let's follow.
Answering the notes you gave to us to prepare this meeting, you asked if we do we see any need for any transnational approach Sure, we love it. We don't know how to do it, but we love it. And what about European Union is thinking about CAP and forest measures? If I would say, I think they are not very happy with it. And why? Because the cost effective is very difficult to be done in our business. I mean, in prevention, we spend about 10 million euros per year in prevention from the minister. How could you measure it? That if the next year are not forest fire in these areas, or what? If it's no forest fire, good, or how many years? So they can't measure, and it's very concerned for them. So it's my impression in Brussels. But in Spain, don't forget that the forestry measures are the second in importance in the whole. There are 2,000, more than 2,000 million euro per year, per period, it's 7 years. How do the regional governments are spending this money? I don't know, but it's a big amount of money. If we could keep this, it will be fine. How, if we have to transfer this money of prevention to productive issues, it's okay. But it's money enough, I think.
Thank you. Margarida, any reflection from your side? You already made some points before.
Specialist on CAP, I don't know even very well what is Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. But anyhow, I think that it's very important that we find new management models in order to make real group management. You see, in Portugal we have tried with what we call ZIFs, forest intervention zones, but they are established, but still each one is dealing with his own property. And we need to be innovative. We need to find ways to do a real management. And here again, the problem is social. So we need a lot of technicians in the field convincing people that they will have to gain if they will manage their lands as a group and find some way to share incomes. I don't know. We have to be innovative. And I think that the CAP maybe could support this type of case studies or so.
Yes.
That's just an idea.
Thank you, Margarida. And now, Alessandra, the last intervention.
I don't think that rural development programs, as we saw until now in Italy, were enough incisive for stimulate forest bioeconomy and addressing forest fires. Funds were mainly used to buy or rent helicopters and other fire extinguisher equipment with the purpose of maximizing fire extinction. We need forest fire forestation or restoration in Italy is not allowed by law after a fire for 10 years. So we can't spend money for CAP for reforestation after fire in the consequence of mafia tentative to burn and then have money to reforestation. And this is very important. But at the moment, the budget of CAP was not due to the forest management, but to the fire risk and the intervention. We need integrative and cross-cutting measures to take care of the whole forest ecosystem, addressing fire prevention, biodiversity protection, landscape enhancement, ecosystem service payments, support to innovative products. Forest policies must be dedicated, not enduring other sector policies, for example, rural, environment, and energetic policies. I think that legal binding agreement will be a strong solution, most of all in this day in which the consequences of Paris Agreement are so controversial. In the ministry, we are reflecting on CAP post-2020, and we have understood that the post-2020 cap will be green or will not be. So we are trying to explain, we try to draw a complex of ideas on this political with forestry and agroforestry and agriculture environment together. It is not easy because the region then expand their money as they want. We are trying to have a program for the region and to try to drive the region in the same street we have imagined. And for the forestal measures, we have decided to address regions on forest planning, first of all, because we have only 15% of forest with a planning. New planning will be according to the strategy, the new strategy, forestry strategy, and we can think that in the law we have another kind of planning, not at a regional way, but a valley way, so to be just for the forest we have, because we have a great variability in the forest ecosystems in Italy. So these are the ideas we are going to.
Thank you very much. And panel is finished. We don't have more time, but I would like to thank you very much for the sharp contributions and the positive constructing discussions. I realize that there is many things that we don't know how to do them yet, but at least the good news is that we know that we need to do them. So hopefully we will find a way. So I would like to give an applause for all the panelists. And now, before I pass the floor to Professor Marco Marchetti, who will give the concluding remarks, just to remind, because you mentioned José Manuel Transnational Initiative, and I would like just to remind you that the EFI has established the European Forest Risk Facility. I think you got the leaflet via email, all the participants register. This is an initiative, it's a European level initiative, it's financed by Germany. Thank you, Germany, always there with the check. Without Germany, we wouldn't manage. I hope that other countries will join later on, but basically this European Forest Risk Facility tries to address what Mark Castaigneau showed in the European map, where he was showing that problems in the future will come in different parts of Europe. And we need to generate a more fluent science policy practice dialogue, and especially exchange information and knowledge and experiences from some parts of Europe where we have gained experience in dealing with some issues, and these problems are coming to other parts. The risk facility will not deal only with forest fires, it will address also pest and disease, also storms and other abiotic issues. So if you are more interested in getting more information, contact the person in the leaflet, not me, please. So now, Marco, maybe you had some homework to do here to illuminate us with some concluding remarks.
Stay there, no problem. Thank you very much. First of all, thanks to everybody for being here for these 4 hours. Intense, very intense. I want to thank Mr. Parson, all the directors, all the colleagues that prepared intensively and absolutely going in depth with a very important issue. This is an issue quite difficult to deal with because it could lead to tragedies we have seen. But I think that we can be happy today because we have tried to go into the root causes of forest fires. And we have also understood that I've been quite impressed, as like everybody I think from the presentation of Mark Castaigneau, that we cannot wait again these scenarios. We have to do something. And the first important conclusion is that we need We need to put value in forest. We are sure that forest is the biggest green infrastructure we have in Europe and all the Mediterranean countries. That is a natural capital with several ecosystem services. Probably for Mediterranean countries, we have to be more aware of these values because we have big values in ecosystem services. And we have to put value on that and to make population, local communities aware of that. This is the first very important message. The second is that we need a better landscape. We need more knowledge, and this is important for EFI. More knowledge means that we have some new topics where to go in depth with the research, with innovation, with technology transfer to forest services and to population. So it has been a great pleasure to have to be here for the first time in Madrid. I don't go through the conclusion in detail, but I want only to have a general approach to this. It has been a great pleasure to have for the first time ThinkForest in Madrid. ThinkForest is hosted by European Forest Institute, and I think it has become the European reference for an informed debate on the future of our forests, and also for being that forest management is the basis for a new economic paradigm, the forest bioeconomy. It is not so nice to hear that two big countries like Spain and Italy have not put forest as the main or as an important pillar of their bioeconomy strategies. And in this sense, I think that another good conclusion for forest policy advice that in EFI we can do also to the Commission is to ask to Mediterranean countries to cooperate more among them and to go to the Commission, to Brussels, and to say that we need this and this, and we need your help to ask to our government to put forests in value and to put forests in the right size of their dimension of their importance. So, of course, we have seen that 4 key factors explain the big problem of fires in this season. First of all, we need a new vision because the risk of forest fires in the Mediterranean region is totally outpacing fire suppression capabilities. This is an important point to be aware with. Despite the billions of euros we have invested in the past. This is for the expansion of forests as a result of rural abandonment, the increase of fuel loads due to the lack of forest management, the high number of fire ignitions due to the socioeconomic and land use related factors, the climate change and the increasing weather risk conditions. So if in the past the focus has been very much on fire suppression rather than on long-term strategies for fire preventions, now we need these new visions where the focus is shifted to fire prevention and forest management, a better landscape and more knowledge. Managing our forests to be more resilient to climate change and addressing the socioeconomic and land use conflicts responsible for the high number of fire ignitions. And also, this is very, very important. We have to start, I see, in the Mediterranean countries. We have to start again to develop forest bioeconomy. But we are sure, and this is a common view, that's another important point today. I think that all the countries have presented a common view, both on the reasons and on the possibilities, the opportunities, the way forward we can go on. Developing a Mediterranean bioeconomy can provide incentives and investments needed for forest owners to address the risk of forest fires, while managing and enhancing the resilience of forest landscape and ensuring the provision of key ecosystem services will reduce the risk of mainly catastrophic fires, because another important lesson we are sure now is that we have to fight mainly against mega fires, against the avoiding firestorms, and in general to fight against catastrophic fires. And for this, I think that we have to work together and to stress, and EFI with its risk facility is now ready for this, to stress the importance to communicate, not only to inform a population during the summertime when the problem is big, and then the attention completely decreases, but we have to find the right way to communicate all we have said today. And in this sense, I think we have a clear mandate to the risk facility. They have to work a lot on new issues on forest fires, because the past research we have done has been extremely useful to understand where we are, but we have to address new conditions and new ways to fight new challenges, because this of mega fires is a new challenge. So thank you very much for being here, and I think that we can finish looking at the video that this summer has been produced by EFI, and that has been also very successful in the contacts on the social, and not only to inform and to communicate to people. Thanks a lot.
Each year we hear terrible news about forest fires in Mediterranean Europe. More and more often, large and high-intensity fires are becoming catastrophic, causing major economic damage and, tragically, the loss of human lives. Why is this happening? 4 key factors are increasing forest fire risk in Mediterranean Europe. The expansion of forests due to the depopulation of rural areas and land abandonment. The increase in fuel loads and fuel continuity due to the lack of forest management. The high number of fire ignitions due to human-induced fires caused by negligence, accidents, and land use conflicts, as well as natural causes. The increase in heat and decrease in rainfall due to climate change. These factors combine to create the perfect storm for catastrophic forest fires. In the past, the focus has been on fire suppression, costing several billion euros each year. Now, a new vision is needed. We have to focus on long-term strategies for fire prevention. Scientific research has already shown how to develop this new vision. A vision where the focus is put on prevention and forest management, helping our forests to be more resilient to climate change, and managing resources to reduce fuel loads and fuel continuity at a landscape level. A vision where the socio-economic and land use conflicts behind fire ignitions are addressed by coherent policies. Only then will suppression efforts become feasible. But such a vision needs to be economically sustainable. So how can we do this? The bioeconomy offers new economic opportunities to develop forest value chains around bioenergy, engineered wood products for sustainable construction, biomaterials based on cork and resin, or edible forest products. Developing a Mediterranean bioeconomy can provide the investments needed for forest owners and communities to manage and enhance the resilience of forest landscapes, ensuring the provision of key ecosystem services and, at the same time, reducing the risk of catastrophic fires. At the European Forest Institute, we connect knowledge to action.
So you are all welcome for the networking lunch, which is outside, and you have also an opportunity to participate to the virtual field trip. We have the Googles for that. So please come to talk to us while you're having the lunch, and you can experience the wildfires also virtually. Thank you.